Welcome to the Justice in Heels podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hayward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for season 4 of the podcast. This season will focus on compliance related topics, and the goal is to simplify compliance for business owners. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. Today I have Nicoline Skumanlo joining me once again. Nicoline, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm also well. I'm excited for this podcast. Like we said just before we started recording, this is actually something that's been in the news quite a bit the last couple of weeks. So I'm super excited. Do you maybe want to just tell our listeners in a few sentences more about yourself? Who is Nicoline and what is she passionate about?
Thank you so much. I'm Nicoline. I'm the managing director of Skuman Law Incorporated, where we proudly serve the legal needs of entrepreneurs, and we've been doing so since 2007. We have been part of clients' journeys from sometimes we are privileged enough right from the ideation or the idea right through to it becoming big business and anything in between, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs, including family owned businesses, succeed so that they can grow and employ more people. And I believe that is a way in which we can address some of the issues and the challenges we experience in our country. So, in a nutshell, I think that is what gets me up in the morning.
Love that. Okay, so I think most of our listeners, if not all of them, already know what a director is. So, do you maybe just want to tell us what are some of the roles and responsibilities that a director has in terms of the Companies Act or even any other act that is applicable?
So I think we've seen in the last few weeks, King 5 is now being launched. It's no longer just a discussion. And I think that's testimony of the seriousness of the office of director and the ethics that underpin the actual office and how we should be really looking at running our businesses as early as possible. So if we go to the point of what is a director, I think the easiest way to explain it is it's someone placed in charge or acting as a custodian for a business, right? So we often call them those that manage the day to day. And that sounds very operational, but I think we need to move away from that and say a director is someone who is responsible to show up and make good decisions, to have a good background on why that decision was made, and ultimately to do so in the best interest of no one other than the business that is seen as a separate entity. The Companies Act actually has provisions on what we expect of our directors, which is a fairly quote unquote new inclusion because we came from a place where we relied on the common law to tell us what we expect of these people that fulfill this very important role. So I think when we speak of directors' duties, we cannot ignore the ethics that underpin it, the fiduciary role. I often say to clients when asked about other roles that are similar, I often say to them it's the best case or test case to illustrate what it means to be a trustee. It's a different piece of legislation, but we are actually being entrusted with assets and money and basically other people's futures when we fulfill this role. And I think, if nothing else, that is something we should remember today. It doesn't mean we go as a director and do or implement. We direct, as the word suggests. We ultimately remain responsible for the implementation or the execution of our decisions to a certain degree, but we have to ensure that we get to good decisions, even if it's difficult, if we're in a larger group, and the decisions we make are implemented always to be in the best interest of this business we are acting for. The Companies Act is our main source, unarguably, but of course, we've got other pieces of legislation that also speak to that. And you may even come across contracts that may say that if you are removed as a director, then you may not act in this capacity, or it's a material breach of our agreement. And it goes to say that's how important this role really is.
So a director is basically like the captain of a ship, steering it in the right
Absolutely.
direction.
Absolutely. And I think I really liked a colleague of mine had a fantastic analogy and said, the captain and the crew of the ship are not down in the engine room, right? They are steering the ship at the top.
Mhm.
So the minute we start dabbling with doing everything ourselves, from an ethical and legal perspective as directors, particularly as this ship or the business grows, running up and down between the engine room, the day to day, let me do this and execute that stuff, and distracting yourself from actually being at the wheel, that's when it really becomes quite dangerous. And if we look at the duties, I mean, the two main ones are the fiduciary, which I've focused on quite heavily. And remember, the common law still applies, even though we've got sections 75 and 76 specifically in the Companies Act that does now include that. It's a new movement for us to have it in law, what we expect of our directors, but it very much actually took the existing common law provisions and we've put it in writing. If we look at the duty of care and skill, now that's an interesting one because it calls on us when acting as directors to really, really take that custodianship seriously, taking care of something on behalf of someone else. To bring that skill, that diligence, doing your homework, in other words, going to a board meeting and actually having read the pack that you've been provided, looking at the financials, not just as, oh, where should I sign this quickly to get the box ticked? We actually have to sit down and think about it and look at it and make sure that this is, in fact, correct. And it goes further, and you'll know in law, we look at the reasonable person as a test to determine if someone has discharged a duty to the best ability or to the reasonable standard, to the benchmark almost that we prescribe to it. But this office is so unique that we have a subjective component to it. In other words, we look at what we expect of you and we look at the law, but we also look at your specific experience. How long have you been working? What qualifications do you have? Where did you work before? And measured against that benchmark of the individual experience is why this is such a unique position to fill.
Definitely, yeah, because I think a lot of people make the mistake that if they start a company and maybe they feel like they need more than one director, or the type of company or organization that they start needs more than one director, then they will technically just like take anybody out of their family and say, okay, I have a cousin who will be keen on being a director, and then they just add them as a director, but that person doesn't necessarily know what is expected of them in being a director. Yeah, but that's a conversation for another day. So everything you've actually mentioned now, regarding the roles and the responsibilities of directors, for me basically comes down to acting in the best interest of the company. So can you maybe tell us a bit more, what does acting in the best interest of the company look like in practice?
Absolutely. And just briefly to the point of who we choose, I think it must be a very strategic decision. It must really look at this is the business or the company. Where do we want to take it? Where do we want to go? What is our vision? And who do we need to guide us and steering the ship to the destination we are seeking to get to. And if I, for example, am an attorney, but we may need a finance arm, we may need a marketing arm. So it's really important for us to look at the skills that we need to pull in at that level. And it's important to look at the personalities. So that's where behavioral profiling is very, very useful because you can see who you have and where are our gaps in order to steer the ship to the destination we are seeking to achieve. What does it mean to act in the best interest of the business? That's a very, very pertinent question. I think the easiest way to explain it is to say, whatever we do cannot benefit you and I, right? It can't be, I'm a director of this business and this is a convenient decision for me, or actually it will result in me getting a bit of a higher salary. So I'm going to do this because it's good for me. Or maybe we are doing a pitch, hoping to get that new business or client. And I actually think my other business that I also serve in as a director will also benefit from this. So we are also going to pitch this. So the point is really um, we have to always say, what is our objective? What's our destination? How do we get there? What are the risks, right? Are they icebergs, heaven forbid, in our example? How do we steer clear from them? What do we need to get there? And those are things that inform us making decisions that aid that process. But the minute we start thinking, oh, but this is not convenient for me, or this actually, I'll make more money if I do it through this other entity. So, whatever profits or advantages we become aware of during our tenure as a director, or because we are involved in this business in some other capacity, should always stay with that business. In other words, we cannot gain for ourselves at the expense of the company. So, if we didn't have that personal agenda, we would actually still have done this deal through this business, and that business would have benefited. But now, because I think this is better for me in my personal capacity, I've channeled it elsewhere. I mean, that makes the hair on the back of our necks really raise, but these things happen.
So, what can actually happen if there's a director that's not fulfilling their duties? Can they get a fine? Can they actually be held personally liable? How does it really work?
I think we've seen a lot of litigation. If we look at the media, I mean, some of it has been at high level with involving big companies. But ultimately, it depends what breach or what level of breach has occurred. I think there's a difference between someone who's ill prepared for a director's meeting and someone who channels a corporate opportunity elsewhere. I also think there's a fundamental difference between someone that doesn't prepare and someone who doesn't disclose that they are actually also involved in some other competing business and channeling all sorts of personal and confidential information illegally that way. So I think if it goes to a serious breach of these duties, I we need to look at it contextually. We need to look at the director service level agreement, the board policy, the MOI, all the governing documents to see how the parties actually decided to deal with this. But fundamentally, if there's a material breach, I regret to say that, in my view, a removal needs to occur. Now, remember, and I think this is quite complex in what we call quasi partnerships, family businesses, friends, people who are very familiar with one another, not just in business, but on the personal side, or people that are shareholders, but they are also a director, it's one in the same human being. Then it becomes really difficult to segment all these duties from those interests. But still, fundamentally, if we have a material breach, regardless of what our documents say, we should proceed with a removal. And there are a number of ways in which we can do that. Um, the removal can either take place in a directors meeting, which in my experience, very few businesses actually undertake because it becomes a pseudo disciplinary hearing. It can often be dragged out quite extensively. It often gets coupled with suspensions. It becomes a reputational nightmare to deal with, and often, in any event, ends up in a forum for review purposes. So that's statistically the option we least see playing itself out. The most frequent option is a shareholder removal that basically entails calling a meeting and allowing the director to put their position to the forum as to why they shouldn't be removed and why they haven't breached their duties. When the removal has occurred, um, then of course the question of claim arises. But before I get there, we shouldn't forget that your MOI can actually also have a process of sorts to remove. We don't see it often, but larger businesses often have that provision to deal with it, to map out a process for that. And if that exists, obviously it should be considered. We've also got court sanctioned removal, which typically with our court rolls and our courts are at the moment, is also not something we see quite often anymore because we it takes too long to actually get it done.
Mm.
But in a case where there are many shareholders and maybe collectively they don't have enough votes to follow a shareholder removal process, that would be the only recourse in the event that the MOI is silent and for whatever reason the board process hasn't been ensued. So once the removal happens, it's not the end of the story, unfortunately. If there's been monetary loss or maybe even reputational damage, any form of damage that flows from this event or lack of event, if I could put it that way, that would be subjected to a claim against the director in their personal capacity under Section 77. There's also Section 218, which we call the General Liability Clause, which means that anyone who feels aggrieved by the actions or decisions of a director or the directors can claim. So it actually increases the pool of people that could become unhappy or could suffer loss or prejudice in some form and claim against a director or group of them. And importantly, we are unable, under the New Companies Act, which is not so new anymore, but given its predecessor was a 1973 legislation, I suppose it is new in context. Those we still have the mechanisms of dealing with these claims, and we also see that it's become a frequent endeavor. And we cannot indemnify our directors by way of insurance or even provisions in our shareholders agreements like we used to in the past. That is unfortunately ab initio null and void, void from the outset. So, really important, it goes to your earlier point. Don't just pull that family member from the dinner table and say, hey, starting a business, would you like to be a director? I think we need to see where we're going, what are the skills and expertise we need, and also who do we trust intrinsically. We need to ask ourselves, would we leave a whole bag of cash in this person's care and not count it when we come back? I think
Mm.
that's maybe the best way of thinking. And also, people who are serious and take this responsibility seriously will know that it comes with a lot of risk. So I think it goes both ways to choose well. That's the
Yes.
best advice I think any of us can give any person looking to recruit that director.
Mm, definitely. I just want to quickly circle back. So you've now mentioned removing directors, and you can do it in any basically way. There's a lot of ways to do it. Can you maybe just expand a bit more on reviewing those decisions? Like, how does that process work if the director that's removed is actually not happy with that decision?
Now, that can also take a number of interesting forms. Of course, we've got the mechanism of the tribunal, the company's tribunal, which is a mechanism that we've often seen utilized, particularly when it's a board removal. And there is a level of review that occurs there, or I wouldn't, it's not an appeal, right? So it's a process that is often a precursor. And if there's still unhappiness, it often ends up in our high court, where the decision is actually called irregular, um, and prejudicial. So it would be a normal review application that we would have in any promotion of Administrative Justice Act or PAJA. And those are often quite lengthy, as we know. If a review occurs or application occurs, there's a process of putting all the evidence before the court, then stating why you're unhappy with the decision, why you find it irregular, why you find it unfair or prejudicial, etc. And then the court would actually consider that and potentially reinstate the director, very much like we would see in an employment context where a matter is referred to the CCMA, and we've got one of two recourses that the employee is seeking, either the instance of reinstatement or then, of course, compensation. So essentially, it operates in the same way. But the problem is that it takes a long time and it can be a very costly exercise. So if we are embarking on removals, no matter what the circumstance, I do think that the board or the person seeking to make the removal, the shareholders, if that's the case, ensure that they take proper legal advice before starting the process.
Okay, so what advice would you give business owners to make sure that they, as the directors, if they are directors, uh, and yeah, their co-directors, basically apply these principles in terms of the Companies Act and basically all of the responsibilities that they have?
Mm. I think, firstly, let's be practical. It's about who we choose,
Mhm.
right? And this is, as we've heard, a very important role that gets fulfilled on a business, for the business and in a business, right? I think we need to choose well. To a certain degree, we vet recruitment processes quite well. Most of us do. We look at the CV, we verify the qualifications. Some of us even go as far as doing criminal checks, right? So I think if we don't know each other from a bar of soap and we're seeking to appoint that person as a director at the outset, before we've gotten to know each other well, I think the same kind of process needs to follow. Let's look at the experience. Let's look at the qualifications. Let's make sure that what we are being presented is actually the case. It hasn't been inflated, right? So I think that's the follow a similar process as we would with recruitment. Make sure that the appointment actually aligns with where we want to go and that this person's skills and experience will allow us to get there quicker, essentially. I also think that it's important to know your board, to know who you are, if you are the person seeking to make this recruitment. And we all have different strengths in life and different focuses. Some of us are task people, others are people, introverts and extroverts, and so on. And it's important to have a mix of people. We shouldn't be the same. And a heated conversation in a boardroom is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
It allows us to challenge one another and to come to a good decision because it's not about being right. It's really about what is the best thing from every different perspective. And that's why King, in its prior version and five, speaks of diversity and speaks of board diversity. So for me, it's a bit deeper than just what are we trained in. So once our verifications are done and it's a good fit and all of that, I recommend that we ensure that we move away from that standard CIPC MOI, make sure that we've got a proper MOI that we all understand, and it's the very foundation of what we expect from each other in a broad sense, but also our directors, that they understand how we do things, how we take decisions, and how we record them, etc. It's not enough to stop there. We have to have a director service level agreement. And remember, a director that is appointed as a director and is there full time, an executive director, is also an employee. So you have to make sure that both relationships are documented. And remember, if you remove your executive director, it doesn't mean you've terminated the employment relationship. So, cautionary, we need to make sure that if there is a problem that leads to removal, that we deal with the labor side in the correct manner. Otherwise, we end up in the labor court or in the CCMA, depending on the earnings, anyway, just for a different reason. So, those agreements are crucial. It allows us to say what do we expect, how are we going to measure whether the directorship is going well. And you can even appoint the role as director for a fixed term. It's not an employment relationship, the actual directorship. It's a separate relationship. So there we've got freedom as to how to contract. The only requirement is if we decide what the remuneration looks like and the terms look like, and we have other directors that join later on, we have to be consistent and fair. That's a common business principle, I would say, for good business anyway. On the employment side, it's important also to ensure that this person understands when I'm in the boardroom and we're making decisions there, I need to prepare, I need to bring my skill, I need to have asked questions. If I don't understand all these things, I have to go and do some research, I have to apply my mind. And I have to vote when I'm at that meeting and give my reasons for why I'm voting the way I am. Whilst when I walk out and I go back to the shop floor, proverbially speaking, then I'm a manager or an employee. And then the direction, the decision that was made at the board is the lawful instruction my employer has given me, which I have to go and make sure gets implemented. There, I can't fiddle with it. I can't change that. That's already been sanctioned. And I think that's the key to a successful enterprise. Knowing what hat am I wearing now? How does it work? What may I not do? Okay, this hat is off now. This is the hat I'm putting on now. I think we have to segregate or segment our roles in our own minds in order for this to be beneficial for everyone holistically.
Brilliant advice. I really think we need to have a second session on this to expand a bit more on it, because I think it's such an interesting topic and there's so many questions that I think people have on this topic. So we'll definitely speak about doing that. But thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. It's always such a pleasure to have you. And where can our listeners reach you?
Thank you so much for inviting me. As always, I really enjoyed the topic. As you can hear, it's something I'm very passionate about. Good luck to everyone who's tuned in today in building your businesses and choosing wisely. I think that's the good first step, the big nugget of the day. They can reach me at skumanlaw.co.za. We offer that free 30-minute conversation. So if anything in this conversation sparks you to think about directorship or maybe some of the corporate do's and don'ts in your business, please feel free to reach out. And then, of course, do connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice in Heels podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with your friends on social media and tag us. As this podcast has a legal element, just a quick disclaimer that all views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the firms, companies, or brands that we are associated with. Until next time, goodbye.